Right, we're going to have a look at solving trig equations. So we are possibly going to be using those identities from the last lesson. So sine squared plus cos squared equals 1 and tan x equals sine x over cos x. So bear those in mind. We won't be using them as much this lesson, but the next week we certainly will be. So we'll be putting everything together. So we're going to look at sine theta equals a half. Now it's important that we know what interval we are looking at. We are looking at the interval between 0 and 360. So the first thing we need to do is need to put in that into our calculators and get a value. And we get 30 degrees. That's the principal value. Obviously, as you've now seen with sine and cosine graphs, there's more than one value. So there are two ways of doing this, and you'll notice if you look at the textbook, there's method 1 and method 2. Myself, Mr. Martin, Miss Bloxham, we all do it this one method, and I think it's the easiest. And any of you that did any of this with me last year, this is how we did it as well. So that's the sine graph. We know that's 180, that is 360. I really seriously would recommend that you draw out a little sine graph every time. We know that there's a value there at a half, and we know that that value is 30. So thinking about this, we said it's symmetrical. So that distance there is the same as this value here, because there's a value here, as this distance here. So the other value is at 180 minus 30, which is 150 degrees. So our two solutions are 30 and 150 degrees. Right, looking at example 11. We have again got an interval of 0 to 360. It is sine again, and we've got 5 sine x equals minus 2. So we cannot solve these until it is sine x equals or cos x equals. So I'm going to divide by 5. I would say that sine x is minus 2/5. I then need to put that into my calculator. You don't need to write that you're doing sine minus 1. If you want to, you're more than welcome. Sine minus 1 of minus 2/5 is minus 23.578. So minus 23.578. We'll decide on what rounding we're going to do later, dependent on the questions. So that's where one value is. So I'm going to draw a sine graph. So that's the bit of the sine graph we drew last time, but I will need to think about this bit here, because the principal value from the calculator has given us this one here. So along here is minus 2/5. So if we say that that is minus 23.6, it doesn't tell us any rounding in the question, that means, just draw a line here, a line here, that distance there is 23.6. That distance there is 23.6. That distance there is 23.6. So we know that that is 180. So we know that there is a value of x at 180 plus 23.6. 180 plus 23.6 is 203.6. Being lazy there. So there's one value there. There is one value here, and we know that that is 360. So the other value is at 360 minus 23.6. Gives an answer 336.4. So we know that there's an answer here, There's an answer here, there's an answer here. There is obviously ones in another 360, but we want the values between 0 and 360, so our two answers are 203.6 and 336.4. So be careful that you are giving the answers in the interval. You will lose marks if you give extra answers. Right, example 12. So we're solving in the interval of 0 to 360. That will be important, it always is. Cos x is root 3 over 2. And it's a question where we're given a student's work here, and we have got to find the errors and then get the correct answer. Well, sometimes when you look at these, you think, well, actually, that's all fine. But I'm just going to start working it out and decide, because I'm going to have to work out the correct answer anyway. So I'm going to start with cos x equals root 3 over 2. So x is cos minus 1 of root 3 over 2. So I'm going to check that. So cos minus 1 of root 3, seem to have too many brackets there. Root 3 over 2 is 30, so that bit's right. So we know that x is 30, that bit's right. We've got no problem with that. Now, it's a cos graph, so this time a cos graph we've got to think about. Cos graphs start at 1, come down to 90, on to 180, 270, 360, so 90, 180, 270, 360. Right. Sorry about that, the postman arrived. Dog's gone mad. Right, so we have one at root 3 over 2, which is a positive value. So we have one value here, which is 30 degrees. So we know that. What have they done? They've taken it from 180. So they've said it was 180 take away 30, which isn't true. That's using the sine graph. So what they have done wrong is so we'll write the principal solution is correct. They have subtracted from 180 using the sine graph. That would give you the negative of root 3 over 2. They should be using the correct cosine graph. So that would be giving you this value here. So if you're remembering, we've got this distance is 30, so this distance is 30. So 360 minus 30 is 330 for our other answer. So when you're doing with these questions here, actually start doing the question. Forget about what it says there, because you'll convince yourself you're right. Start doing the question, and then you've got your answers for the next bit anyway. So there's your answer for A. There's your answer for B. Right, example 13. So we are going to need one of these identities this time. So sine squared x plus cos squared x equals 1. Tan x equals sine x over cos x. So, got to remember our interval is 0 to 360. We've got sine theta equals root 3 cos theta. So, if I'm thinking about this one and this one, I'm thinking it's not going to be this one because it's not got sine squareds in, and I don't think I'm going to start squaring everything. So if I divide by each side by cos theta, I've got sine theta over cos theta equals root 3. Sine theta over cos theta equals tan theta is root 3. So there's my equation. So remember, we're always getting down to no numbers here, no fractions here, no sines and coses, just sine, cos or tan equals something. That's what you've got to end up with. So to find theta, we are going to put that in our calculators. So 10 minus 1 of root 3 is 60. So that's one of the exact value ones. These are ones that you will start to get to know after a while. You don't need to know because of your calculator, but if it does ask you for exact values, you should be, if you're using 60 and you're using tan, you should be thinking about root 3. So the tan graph is actually the easiest. It looks the most complicated, but it's the easiest. I wouldn't even recommend you add any more, draw a graph here at all. The tan graph repeats itself every 180 degrees. So I either have to add 180 onto this or take it off and decide how many times I need to do it. Well, if I take 180 off, I will be out of the interval. That will take me into a negative number. So if I add 180 onto there, I get 240 degrees. It ends at 360, so adding another 180 on would be too many.